we have been running this one Performance Max campaign, which since the start has spent roughly $1.7 million in revenue for a total of a 14x ROAS. And in this video, I want to break it all down for you and show you how it's been running for so long, so profitably, so you can do the same exact approach for your own e-commerce brand. But before any of that, let's first look at the campaign itself a bit deeper to understand it on a greater level. Now, this specific campaign, if we change this column right here to cost, we can see it's been running since July of 2022. Now, if you look at this number right here, you'll see that it spent $57,000 in total ad spend just on this campaign alone to make back $1.2 million in revenue. This is an entirely false number because during this time, number one, we were not working with this brand. This is a brand under my Google Ads agency or marketing. But number two, their conversion tracking information and data for all of this time period from 2022 basically to the middle of 2024 when we began working with them is entirely faulty. They have a history of having double tracking, even triple tracking going on for a lot of their overall campaigns and their overall numbers. They just never really took data acquisition that seriously, and it can be seen if we look at these numbers: $53,000 in ad spend for $815,000 in total revenue. So this campaign had a lot of hyperinflation going on during the earlier portion, which is, by the way, why I always say it's so crucial for you to know that your data is 90 to 95% accurate at the very bare minimum. Otherwise, your entire ad account can suffer like this brand did for such a long period of time. But starting 2024, once we began work, these numbers started to be more realistic, and this brand is a high-ticket brand, which is why these numbers right here that you see, $68,000 in ad spend per $634,000 in revenue, is a lot more accurate and a lot more realistic because the ROAS on average for this brand is a 10x to a 15x in general. But originally, when we first began working with this brand, let's now take a little bit of a deeper look into how things were overall during the start, because this Performance Max campaign itself that has been running for so long was directly influenced by all of these campaigns which they also had running during this time period. So if we look from basically the 1st of July of 2022 all the way to the end of December of 2022, we can see that during this time they had several different campaigns running. They had in total about, as we can see, 8 different campaigns running during this time period, a mixture of Performance Max along with standard shopping. Now, for the OG ones who have been using Google Ads for a long period of time, you know that in 2022 is when pmax was originally introduced. And because of the recent introduction, this brand had just kind of transitioned from those old campaigns called Smart Shopping campaigns into Performance Max. And there was really no major strategy in place or in effect with these different pmax campaigns they had running during that time. It was just all over the place. The same product was active in 4 different campaigns. All of these 4 campaigns, this pmaxes, had different things going on, like different asset groups, different restrictions, so on and so forth. And most important of all was they had very little restriction going on for this major Performance Max campaign, which means no target ROAS restriction, no target CPA restriction. Things were just running as they should be. Flash forward to when we began working with this brand, when we actually understood that there were a lot of grave issues we had to kind of undo with this brand. We started to basically recalibrate how this Performance Max campaign was originally running. So from basically the 1st of August, although we started working in middle of 2024 essentially, but until June 30th of 2025, you might look at this chart and think that it's been in a downward trend. And exactly what was going on, why is it going down? Well, number one, the thing is conversion tracking data became realistic, so naturally ad spend dropped as well as the real conversion value because these were more realistic numbers. And number two, as we began working with this brand, we started incorporating a bit more strategies on the other side of things like standard shopping, other pmaxes, even to kind of distribute the amount of risk we had with just one Performance Max campaign alone. But essentially, starting with this Performance Max campaign itself, let's start with the asset group section to understand what our strategy has been this entire time. Now, as you can see inside this asset group section, we have only one major asset group running at this point of time, and this is the only asset group which has been running within this brand for the entirety of this campaign itself. As you can see, it says it generated $24 million in total revenue during the time period it's been active. However, this is not true, as I mentioned earlier, due to conversion tracking issues. But there was no other asset group within this major PMax which was tested, because this was the winning approach they had originally found from previous testing from other advertising channels. And keep in mind, this is a brand which has been active in the space since 2007, so they have years and years of data to back it up. We wanted to kind of keep things the same, because the last thing you want to do is go inside an account and change things for the sake of changing. So just because of that, we kept everything as it should be with this asset group section, and we started testing with other PMAXs with other asset group strategies like feed only, so on and so forth. But this entire campaign has been running with different images, logos, headlines, etc. Of course, proper A/B testing, adding a bit more as needed over time, getting rid of the old ones. But the audience signals itself, this has stayed fairly the same. It's just basically custom intent audiences, and as along with that, a customer list of all our perfect customers. This brand has thousands upon thousands of customers, so that makes it much easier for this asset group to go after the right audience which we want to be targeting essentially. But in addition to that, along with the asset group section, during this time, what we did with the products, because earlier in total for this campaign, it had a lot of different SKUs, roughly 12,000 different SKUs which are active right now, but in total it had 18,000 SKUs. And before, there were actually even more. Before we started working together, we did have to start with a brand new feed, a supplemental feed, and so on and so forth. But we kind of narrowed down this PMax campaign to just 12,000 different SKUs running and getting tested, and we turned this campaign into a testing campaign only / a scaling campaign. Because anytime any of these products started to do well, for instance, they started to scale, they started to really perform well, what we did is we essentially started to basically move out all of the products which had less than one click or which were not performing well into their own separate campaign. So that's essentially what our strategy is at this point of time. If we look at the other PMax campaigns and standard shopping campaigns we are running, is basically all of those other products which are not performing as well or need to be scaled separately in their own collection-based approaches, so on and so forth. They're in their own separate categories. But this PMax campaign has just a generic amount of products in there, which, by the way, this is the same approach we take for a lot of the brands which we work with under my agency, Your Marketing, which if you're in a brand doing 50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But essentially what we are doing here is we are now starting to be a bit more restrictive with this campaign in general, because the influence that this campaign has on the overall account, it has diminished significantly over the years. Keep in mind, it's been running since 2022, so about 3 years now. So it's already had its fair share of reach, it's already had its fair share of sales. Now it's time to move forward with other campaign strategies. So we're starting to add a bit more restrictions, and these are all based on the inside section, which I'll go very shortly over. But if we look right here, the restriction here is 1500%. That's a 15x ROAS, which we want this campaign to achieve. And that's not a random arbitrary number we just came up with. Rather, it's based on years upon years of data for this ad account in general, as well as this campaign in general, but also how the performance has been over the last few weeks and so on and so forth. So if we look right here, there has been a little bit of a drop in terms of the ad spend, going from $1,500, which, by the way, the summertime, April, May, and even June in some situations is one of the best time periods for this brand in general. But of course, keeping in mind that the ROAS values are high and we need to keep them high because the break even is also at a very high pace. But we're essentially using the inside section, looking at the keywords to understand which keywords we're ranking for, which keywords we're not ranking for, and improving the back end based on that as well. But essentially what we are now doing is we're redistributing the budget that's been going within this campaign to now be allocated for this other standard shopping campaign, which has basically took its place. And keep in mind, we went from PMax to standard shopping simply because we have been using both of these campaigns for testing purposes only. That's their main goal, just to test different products. Now, although the same product is active in both the standard shopping as well as the Performance Max, what's happening right now is whatever campaign has the higher quality score, whatever campaign has the better overall approach in Google's eyes, is the one winning more of the auctions, is the one spending the more money. So technically, in this situation, the standard shopping has taken over this Performance Max campaign by a long shot. It's generated $500,000 in revenue in the last 30 days, whereas the PMax barely $160K. Now, it is at a much higher ROAS, but that's because this also has higher ROAS restrictions compared to this one, which we have now lowered the restrictions on the standard shopping, because the main goal of this standard shopping is to just go out and test different products and reach a broader audience, whereas this one is to keep things more profitable, keep things more steady. But they're not going to compete with each other despite both of these campaigns having the same exact product because of the way Google works and the new updates Google has had. Now, the strategy at this point of time for this pmax campaign is fairly simple. There's only two things we have been doing, and you can even see it within the change history. Number one, we're either changing the budgets, or number two, we're changing the bidding restrictions as needed. And as you can see, we haven't even needed to change them in the recent time period because this campaign has been on autopilot, just doing its own thing. Now, what we do oftentimes is if the ROAS starts to drop, we will start to increase the percentages that we are targeting. So in April, it was 1,000%, but by May 15th, we had increased it steadily to 1,500%. And we're increasing or decreasing the budgets only as needed, only based on the results that this campaign is providing. And over time, again, it has decreased. So that's why we've decreased the budgets as well as increased the restrictions to keep it going just a bit more, just to squeeze out that juice as much as we can until we finally have to shut it off. Because keep in mind, every campaign does have a deadline. Every campaign does have an end, where ultimately you might have to just end that campaign and start with a new approach, or just transition that to an existing campaign, all of that data and whatnot. But essentially, that's the general approach that we are using with this pmax. It's very simple, just having one asset group approach in here with the products, multiple different SKUs, thousands of different SKUs, but that's completely fine because the budget is fairly high and it's able to spend that much amount of money on these different SKUs. What we are doing is we're regularly using the insight section to improve the feed, which is why, by the way, we've been able to keep this campaign going for so long. But that's essentially what you need to do for your brand as well. You don't need any crazy strategies. I mean, if we go back and look at the last 30 days to look at all of the campaigns which we have running at this point of time, we can see it's barely 6 different campaigns running, but this brand does multi-6 figures per month in total revenue, and nowadays even 7 figures. Last 30 days won $1.1 million in revenue. But keep things simple, don't overcomplicate it. And if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.